This brick-built creature is a sight to behold. Let's unpack the techniques and the build process of this creation, and let's learn a little thing or two that might help us with our own future builds. Let's dive in. Mr. Anthony Wilson has crafted an absolute masterpiece with this mock, Aquasaurus. There's something so impressive and stunning and beautiful about this creation, whether it's the unique shape of it, the striking color scheme, or the way that Anthony has made ordinary Lego pieces look so organic, smooth, and beautiful instead of blocky and clunky. The mix of orange, white, blue, dark blue, and then a nice hint of teal as well as a brilliant aquatic color scheme, and it's just a wonderful mix of colors that accent and contrast perfectly with each other. There's also some other wonderful details like the texture on the body, adding in dots elements, adding in studs, and even a few of these light aqua parts to make it look like scales or something. I don't know, it just adds a bit of variety and realism, and it's really cool. It's also worth noting the brilliant seaweed on the base. And even though this is actually separate to the mock, this bright pop of bright green does actually contrast perfectly with the Aquasaurus. A big area of bright green up against a bunch of blue just looks stunning. But also the inclusion of that little witch doctor mask, the turtle, and the fish as well, it really helps create this underwater vibe. These small details really transform this plain black stand and makes it way more interesting by making it have this underwater vibe. This stand could have just been something you forget about, but these tiny details really bring out the mock itself. So that's it for some of the smaller details. But let's take a look at some of the best parts of this creation now. So I had the pleasure of seeing this creation in person at Brickvention 2023. And because of that, I was able to take a closer look at all the details. Now, the first thing I looked at was the back of the Aquasaurus. And as you can see, it's not really meant to be viewed from behind. And to be honest, I think that's really cool. Whenever I build something, my building style lends towards a build that can be viewed from a 360-degree viewing angle. But seeing a creation that's only really meant to be viewed from one angle, I think really changes the way I think about building. For example, the leg design here. You can see these black support beams which appear to be very important to the overall structural integrity of this leg. Now, if you were building this from a 360-degree viewing point, you'd struggle to cover that up and you'd struggle to maintain that overall design and make it look so clean and pretty. But in this case, you just put the black beam on the back of the leg and you don't really have to worry about it because you just won't see it. And I guess that's an interesting ideology to take into your own future creations. How many angles do you want this creation to be viewed at? And then as a result, can you do some fun and clever tricks that allow you to get away with things or techniques that maybe aren't possible with a 360-degree viewing angle? Looking at the back of the tail of the creature now, you can see more unfinished areas, and hey, like I said, it doesn't matter that they look this way because you just can't see them. But with this specific area here, you can see this big triangle that would be pretty difficult to cover up and maintain the same textures and smoothness that the look of the front of the tail has. So I think that's another reason that building something that's only meant to be viewed from one angle is so good. You don't have to worry about filling in these difficult to build areas. You can just leave it blank and only worry about it on one side. That really does make the job much easier. Now, while we're talking about difficult angles, let me tell you the reason that this creation really did make me rethink Lego building. From this gorgeous front view, I was so captivated by the incredible S-curve of this creation, and the way that the larger sections transition down into the smaller sections is genius. But the fact that this creation has no noticeable gaps is the most impressive thing. With body designs like this, it's so difficult to achieve such seamless flow between sections. I mean, even looking at like a toy snake, for example, you often see gaps between the segments, and they're pretty hard to cover up. It's especially difficult with Lego pieces. So how do you create curvy, organic designs with blocky Lego pieces? It's a tough one. I always struggled to wrap my head around how you actually do that. But seeing this creation from behind, I realized how you could. The back shows that this mock is really just a series of small system brick-built cubes wrapped in brackets that allow you to connect different things onto them, and then they're linked together with these socket connection pieces. Now, once you've made these individual cubes, it's really just about decorating the edges and finding some way of bridging the gaps in between. And you can see that Anthony has done that with the use of some of these wedge plate pieces, and he's also done it with some of these grill slope pieces as well. Now, it seems that each section requires a different solution to fill in the gap, but I think what really grabbed me was how much easier this complicated organic body was when you just kind of broke it down into easy, manageable chunks and tackle each section one by one. I mean, it's so easy to get overwhelmed by this whole design and wonder how it's done, but when you pay attention to the finer close-up details, you realize it's not as difficult as you may have first thought. Now, sure, it's still a challenge to nail all the angles and bridge every single section perfectly, but it's less overwhelming and it's more approachable when you think about things in a smaller and more manageable chunk. And sometimes I think the biggest hurdle for any Lego builder is overthinking stuff. So really dumbing it down makes this way more approachable. And I thought that was a really fun lesson, and hey, I hope you can learn from my lesson as well. Now, while we're talking about covering up gaps, here's one other small detail that Anthony included that I love. CCBS armor shells have these bar connections on the side at the top here. And Anthony put one here on the leg. But he covered up this strange bar gap here by simply putting this flag piece over the top and bridging that CCBS armor piece into the system above it. I adore this because those holes kind of ruin the smooth texture of this creation. So finding a way to cover them up and bridge it up with the above area, very clever. Now let's finish off this video with a look at some of the build process photos as Anthony was building this creation that he shared over on Instagram. Let's see what else we can learn about the building process that he did. We start off with early stages of Anthony building this, where he's mapping out the rough size and shape with basic pieces. Again, you can see some of those manageable sections and how they looked in the early development. Up next, Anthony draws over the top of this image and gives himself a bit of a better understanding of how he wants the mock to look in relation to what's actually there. I love this idea. I've seen a few builders do this. They photograph their work in progress, and then on the picture on their phone, they draw over the top of it so that they can get a better sense of how it'll look. And if they want to share it with other people, you can be on the same page as them with the rough look that you're going for. Plus, I think it's also a really nice way to bridge the ideas in your head to the actual physical, finished execution. It's clever. The body starts to then take shape a bit more in the next step, and we can see Anthony playing with the size of the fins here. Now, these do get smaller later on as the mock progresses, but I find it interesting that he's experimenting and playing, seeing if, maybe it being a bit bigger is good or maybe not so good. It's always important to test things out like that. The next sketch shows Anthony drawing once again, and this drawing looks a little bit closer to the final design, and it seems that he's still refining the overall look here. On the next step, we can see the legs are starting to take shape, but it's using pieces that the final design didn't actually use. And I think this is really smart. Why not build a temporary structure that can help you get the feel of the proportions you need to aim for, and then how you can build around that as a result. Nothing wrong with some temporary stuff that can aid your building as you work on other areas. And now this final photo shows the almost finished version, and we can see a very different foot design here with some different colors on the leg as well. And it's nice to know that even more changes were made when this was like 90% done. It's never too late to stop ideating and refining your ideas and your creation. Anything for the pursuit of a perfect finished product. And then the creation's all built, like we saw before. Now, I think this is just such a masterfully built Lego creation, and honestly, it may be one of my all-time favorite creature builds. It's just so dynamic, lifelike, striking, and unique. I just adore this. Well done, Anthony. Now, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check the links in the description and see some of the other stuff that Anthony has built. He is such a good builder. Definitely check out what else he's done. Thank you for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.